Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to kick off the session now. Firstly, say thank you to everyone for coming this afternoon and giving up your time to come here about the additional safety measures consultation, which, as you'll be aware, has been live from June 30th and is our next step in the policy development of the Online Safety Act framework and regime. Really pleased to have you with us today. Today's session is focused on attendees from service providers, and we see this as just very much the start of a process. There's a number of other things that we'll talk about that we're doing later on in the consultation period to get more engagement of different types. But this is a really important session to help us introduce the proposals to you and for you to be able to ask any introductory kind of clarification questions and put you in the best place to start considering the way you might respond and engage with us. For those that know me, my name is Lawrence Pauly. I'm a principal in the online safety policy team here at Ofcom, and my team is leading on this consultation. In terms of how we will run the session today, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning. I'm then going to hand over to John Hyam, one of our online safety directors, to give an introduction to the context of the consultation. We will then run through a presentation of each of the proposed measures within the consultation, and we're joined by the policy leads for most of those measures to help us with that. And I'm really grateful for them for making time to be here this afternoon. We will then move on to questions, and we can go until about 5:15. So we should have some decent time for Q&A as well. Just to make you aware, today's session is being recorded. We will make it available in due course via Ofcom channels and by email to attendees as well. And that includes also making the slides available too. To help us manage the conversation, we've had some restrictions on functionality, so audience mics and cameras are set to be off for the duration of the meeting. The chat function is also off as well. You are able to ask questions at any point through the Q&A function in Teams. We will kind of collate those questions and address them at the end of the session. Some caveats just to make people aware of. Firstly, just to be really clear up front, we are at consultation stage right now. We are presenting proposals today, but they are just that, proposals. They are here for discussion and for stakeholder views. So this is not yet a final Ofcom position at all. Obviously, today you will get an overview of the proposals, but we won't be able to cover all the nuance in the time available. So please refer to the consultation itself and its supporting documents for the details of our thinking and our rationales. In relation to questions, we're happy to kind of address as many questions as we can today. We are unlikely to get time for everything that comes in, so apologies in advance for that. We're happy to respond to follow-ups or things that don't get addressed by email, and I'll give contact details later on. Please focus your questions on the proposals in the consultation itself to help us with that. And as you'll understand, we obviously can't provide advice on whether a specific service provider's approach is likely to be compliant with the proposals that are in these measures, both because they are just that, proposals right now, and obviously, if and when they do form part of the codes, we will be able to kind of vet our ability to take enforcement action at a later date if we needed to. I hope that is all clear by way of introduction. And with that, I'm going to pass to John Hyam, one of our directors for online safety policy, for some scene-setting words. So, John, when you're ready.
Thanks very much, Lawrence. So, as Lawrence mentioned, I'm John Hyam. I'm Director of Policy Development in Ofcom's Online Safety Group. And I'm the director sort of responsible for, our policy in relation to the codes of practice and guidance we've issued on illegal harms under the Online Safety Act. And therefore, I'm sort of responsible for overseeing this consultation. I just wanted to say a few words to sort of set the scene and put this consultation and today's context and today's discussion in the wider context of our work. I think it's fair to say for the past couple of years we've been very much in sort of policy development mode, and now really we're beginning to shift focus. So the illegal harms codes of practice are now in force. The protection of children codes will come into force at the end of next week on the 25th of July. So we're increasingly pivoting from sort of pure policy making into sort of action, really. we're now sort of scrutinising whether service providers are fulfilling their new duties. We'll be having we are having supervisory conversations with a wide range of stakeholders, including many of you on this call. And where we have concerns, about compliance, we've already started taking enforcement action in relation to the illegal harms duties. And I'd sort of expect to see more of that coming down the track once the protection of children duties come into play. But I think it's also fair to say that whilst we're ramping up our work on driving compliance, policy development work hasn't gone away as a focus for us. We're very much committed to taking an iterative approach. And building on the codes of practice and guidance we've issued sort of progressively over time. And with that in mind, and in parallel to driving compliance, we're consulting on a targeted set of measures to strengthen our first edition codes of practice on illegal harms. And that's what we put out on the 30th of June. That's what the additional safety measures consultation focuses on. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. So that's the broad context. And with that, I'll hand back to Lawrence and the team to take you through some of the detail.
Thank you, John. As you rightly said, this is very much a kind of a targeted addition to the existing code. This is not a full iteration of the code, which is building on what's already there. And really, we've started to think about the measures that are in this consultation that we'll talk about today as broadly sitting in three categories. So the first is tackling harms at the source. And this is really about stopping illegal content or content harmful to children from reaching users in the first place. It covers our proposals on the use of proactive technology like hash matching, and our plans to sanction users who share content that violate the regulatory framework. The second set of proposals really address virality in one way or another. So our proposed measures on recommender systems, on live streaming for all users, and crisis response are all really about aiming to limit the reach of content that breaches the regulatory framework. And finally, we have a further set of measures which continues our focus on giving more protection to children. So these include a specific set of proposals on live streaming for children and more use of highly effective age assurance, including to strengthen the application of our existing grooming protections. So I'm now going to pass on to our excellent team of policy experts, and they will talk you through each of our proposals in more detail. And after that, we will move to questions. Please feel free to put your questions in via Teams at any point during the presentation, and we'll then start to pick them up when that's finished. So I believe I'm first passing to Zoe in relation to proactive tech.
Thanks, Lawrence. Hi, everyone. I'm Zoe Viner, and I was the policy lead on the proactive tech measures. So in this slide, I'm going to speak to our proactive technology measures. And to be clear up front, when we're talking about proactive technology, we're talking about three different types of proactive tech. So we're talking about content identification technology, behavior identification technology, and user profiling technology as they are respectively defined in the Act. So by way of a little bit of background to these measures, we kind of consider proactive technology to be a really key way of detecting specific kinds of both illegal content and content harmful to children on user-to-user services, particularly when services reach a certain size. At this scale, proactive tech plays a really crucial role in supporting both the quick and accurate detection of content, which ultimately we consider would prevent widespread harm to UK users. So up until this point in our policy development process, we have recommended in our codes that services review, assess and swiftly take down specific types of content. We've also recommended in our illegal harms codes that providers use hash matching and URL detection technology to detect and remove CSAM and CSAM URLs. But these proposals aim to go further, and they're building off both kind of stakeholder responses and evidence on both the target harms and the technologies that can be used to detect them. So what are we actually recommending? We're recommending two different measures under proactive technology. So the first is that providers should assess whether proactive technology to detect or support the detection of target content, which I will come on to in a second, is available and meets a set of 8 proactive technology criteria that we have developed, and we've also produced supporting draft guidance on these proactive technology criteria that you'll have seen published alongside the consultation. And then the second thing we're recommending is for providers who already deploy proactive technology for the target harms. We're recommending that they should assess whether existing proactive tech meets the same set of proactive technology criteria. Just to note here, 2 things that are important. The first is that, consistent with the Act, these measures do not apply to user-generated content that's communicated privately. And the second thing is that these measures apply when we're talking about proactive tech that's used to support the detection of content, rather than talking about that the end-to-end kind of content moderation system and processes. So why we've proposed these measures, as I kind of mentioned up front, we consider that these proposals will really increase the amount of illegal content and content harmful to children which service providers are able to detect and then subsequently action accordingly. And at the same time, the way in which we've designed these proposals aim to safeguard freedom of expression, because they only recommend service providers use these types of technologies when they are sufficiently accurate, effective, and free from bias. Finally, who these measures apply to. So first, it's large user-to-user services that are medium risk and user-to-user services with more than 700,000 monthly UK users that are high risk of at least one of the following relevant harms. And these are the target harms that I was referring to prior. So first off, in relation to illegal harms, this constitutes image-based CSAM, CSAM URLs, grooming, fraud and other financial service offences, encouraging or assisting suicide. And then in relation to content harmful to children, we're talking about primary priority content, and that includes content related to suicide, self-harm, eating disorders, and pornography. We also propose that these measures should apply to file storage and file sharing services of any size that are high risk of image-based CSAM. And finally, all user-to-user services with a high risk of grooming. And with that, I think I will now pass on to Angharad, I think.
Thanks, Zoe. Hi all, I'm Angharad and I'm a policy advisor in Ofcom's Women and Girls online safety team, and I'm going to talk through intimate image abuse hash matching. So as part of this consultation, we're proposing that certain user-to-user and search services use an automated tool called perceptual hash matching to detect intimate images which are shared without consent, so that those images can be removed, or in the case of search services, delisted or downranked. We're proposing this measure because we know that intimate image abuse is a really widespread harm, and the proliferation of generative AI tools is causing a further growth. We also know that intimate image abuse causes really serious personal, professional, and psychological harm to survivors and victims. And this is often worsened by the ongoing threat of images reappearing online, or unfortunately, in some cases, images that have never been removed. We know that hash matching is an effective tool to prevent the sharing and resharing of known content. We know that it's something that's already widely used within industry, and we think that the wider adoption of hashing technology will materially reduce the circulation of intimate image abuse content, and that in turn will reduce the significant negative impact that it has on the lives of survivors and victims. We are aware that there's a risk with perceptual hash matching technology that it may result in the identification of content that is not intimate image abuse, and we have designed this measure with several safeguards to mitigate against that risk. In terms of which services we're proposing to bring in scope of this measure, for the majority of services, they will have a choice between either using a third-party hash database or an internally developed hash database. And in terms of which services will have that choice, that's providers of user-to-user services which are high risk of intimate image abuse and have more than 700,000 monthly active UK users, and also providers of large user-to-user services that are medium risk for intimate image abuse, and providers of large general search services. For providers of user-to-user services which are high risk of intimate image abuse and either whose principal purpose is the hosting of regulated pornographic content or which are file sharing and file storage services, we are specifically recommending that those services use at least a third-party database, and that's because of the particularly high risk of intimate image abuse on those service types. And I think I'm now passing over to Al.
Thanks very much. Yeah, hi everyone, my name's Al Puller. I'm the policy lead here for terrorism, hate and incitement, and I led the work here on the terror hash matching measure. So to run through our proposal, so we're proposing that relevant services use hash matching to detect known terrorism content, and this will be in the form of image, video and PDF so they can be removed. Why we're proposing this particular measure, so we're aware that terrorists use online platforms to spread illegal terrorism content, recruit individuals, including children, and obviously plan attack and different operations. Although service providers are encouraged to support user reporting and swift removal, we're aware that user reporting on its own has major limitations. So it's our belief that wider use of hash matching, in addition to kind of other illegal harms, would reduce the circulation of known illegal terrorism content. The services in scope of this measure are providers of large services which are at medium or high risk of terrorism content, and services which are at high risk of terrorism content and also have over 700,000 monthly UK users, or are file sharing or storage services. This is because our evidence base points to the fact that a lot of terrorism content, illegal terrorism content, is located on these types of services, with terrorism supporters or users using kind of larger high reach services to signpost or supporters or users to these file sharing or storage services where illegal terrorism content is stored. We talk about in our measure as well about different third-party databases that we're aware of within industry. So this in particular is the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism's hash sharing database, and also Tech Against Terrorism's TCAP platform. We're looking for information on others if stakeholders have evidence in relation to that. What we say in our measure here is that those are the third-party databases we're aware of, but it's our understanding really that services in scope of this measure will have to construct their own internal database to store their own hashes from their own content moderation function, and obviously they can then choose to supplement these efforts with the use of a third-party database, but that would be very much on them to make that decision and obviously do their due diligence around any third-party hash sets or lists that they want to kind of ingest. So that very quickly is a terrorism hash matching measure. This is perceptual hash matching, and I'm happy to take further questions towards the end of the session. And I'm now going to hand over to Rob. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks. Hi all, I'm Rob Hayward, and I lead on policy development for trust and safety topics here at Ofcom. So next up, we have our user sanctions measure, which sets out that all user-to-user services should prepare and enforce a sanctions policy in respect of UK users who generate, upload, or share illegal content or content harmful to children, which is prohibited on the service. Now, our existing codes already set out that providers should take content moderation action in relation to illegal content and content harmful to children, but before now, there was no requirement to take further action against the user who posted that content. With this measure, we intend to reduce the risk of repeat violations, limiting the spread of such content and educating users in the process. Addressing the behavior of users is crucial if we want to continue to make online environments safer. Now, we know that sanctions can significantly impact on a user's ability to use a service, and so we have included factors within this measure for providers to consider when setting their sanctions policy to help with the judgment of which sanction is appropriate to use in different circumstances. This includes the severity of potential harm to UK users from the content, whether the user is a repeat offender, and the potential impact of the sanction on the user in question. By using these factors, we consider that providers will be able to strike a balance between protecting UK users from harm while also considering their rights to freedom of expression. Now, this measure allows providers to prepare a sanctions policy to fit your specific service, and as such, it does not dictate which sanctions need to be applied in each circumstance. Given that this applies to all user-to-user services with differing functionalities and risks, we consider it appropriate to offer that level of flexibility. We will, however, be covering our CSCA sanctions measure later in this presentation, which gives more specific instructions for that type of content. And with that, I will now hand to Murtaza, who will be talking through some of our live streaming measures.
Thank you very much, Rob. So when it comes to live streaming, it's one of the important focuses of this consultation. We've spent a lot of time looking at the specific characteristics of this functionality. We've proposed some specific measures to protect children, which we'll be talking about later, that are relevant to live streaming. But we also think that there's a strong case for baseline protections for all users. And that's reflective of some key features that we've observed around live streaming. The first one being that it's ephemeral, and its in-the-moment nature can make it a particularly compelling form of communication. And number two, the challenges for existing moderation practices posed by a live stream function, and that includes limitations of automated systems. Looking at the type of harm that can result, we've focused on some instances of harm which might not be frequent in some instances, but at the same time are very extensive, have very extensive and serious impacts on users, adults and children. Some examples of that would be live streams to broadcast terrorist attacks, suicide attempts, or harms to children. In terms of the measures that we're proposing, there's two of them, and we think these would better equip in-scope services to tackle this type of harm quickly and more effectively. Firstly, we're recommending that services offering live streaming should have human moderation available at all times when the live streaming functionality is live or available. I think this recognizes both the value in being able to act quickly in response to live instances of harm, as well as the challenges that I referred to earlier with some automated models. And I think we're very open to evidence from services and others on what automated systems might there be that are effective or in current use when it comes to moderating content in real time as part of our consultation process. Secondly, we're recommending that any service which has a live stream functionality implements a new reporting category that users can use to report a stream which features a risk of imminent physical harm. We think this should help services prioritize action on the most severe risks when combined with their existing duties to moderate content. We think taken together, these two measures would mean that the most harmful live streams should be identified and taken down quicker than might be the case now. And we think that also then reduces the risk of such content being recorded and shared widely in the aftermath of the live stream. Finally, which services would this measure apply to? What we refer to as segmentation. It would basically apply to any service that offers one-to-many live streaming and which is also at medium or high risk of a number of harms. And those harms include terrorism, grooming, image-based CSAM, assisting or encouraging suicide, hate or harassment, stalking, threats, and abuse. And obviously, just for clarification, this would include services that are live streaming only services, as well as those services which have it as just a functionality amongst other things that they offer. Thank you. Handing over to John, right?
That's right. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Lawrence, as well. Hi, everyone. I'm John. I'm a policy associate in the Hate, Terrorism, Suicide, Self-Harm team and was the policy lead for the recommender systems measure. So in essence, this measure is the request that where there is relevant available information, so we also use the term indicators for this, where those indicators suggest that a piece of content is potentially illegal content, service providers should exclude it from user recommender feeds until such time as its legality has been ascertained. So obviously that would be through the existing systems and processes at these services. We don't prescribe a method by which it's reviewed. We just ask that it be its legality be ascertained before it be recommended to users where those indicators suggest it might be illegal or is potentially illegal. So really, we're proposing this measure because we accept that recommender systems can really have this significant amplification effect. I think it's sort of quite clear to everyone how quickly these things can happen. And we accept sort of the limitations on traditional systems and processes to moderate content. Obviously, in instances, particularly in reference to events such as the murders that occurred in Southport, we can see how quickly stuff can spread, and we recognize that these limitations on moderation systems and processes may prevent services from being able to adequately moderate everything in a timely matter, in a timely fashion. So without this measure, we anticipate the possibility of illegal content being spread very, very quickly, at which point it would be very difficult for traditional systems and processes to bring that under control. As such, we've proposed this measure to really just make sure that content is legal before it has a chance to go viral, at which point obviously we anticipate limiting the harm that could be had on users being exposed to it, but also the overall harm that the content sort of aims to have in regard to things like FIO, sorry. So the goal is to basically limit that harm at the point it is uploaded, rather than later down the line if it's been amplified or made viral. So the services in scope of this measure are those user-to-user services that have a content recommender system and are medium or high risk for at least one kind of the following kinds of illegal harm: so hate, terrorism, suicide, and foreign interference offence, FIO. Those are the harms that we acknowledged in our illegal harms register of risk as being the harms by which content recommender systems pose an increased risk of the occurrence of those types of harm, which is what led us to sort of have these as the focal points of this measure. As it stands, this measure would expect you to remove content that is of those types. So we wouldn't be expecting the removal of potentially illegal other harmful content, because those are not the ones that we've recognised as being a risk factor. Obviously, this is only at the proposal stage, so there is the capacity for change should consultation responses provide sufficient evidence to warrant any kind of change. But as it stands, that is what we're proposing, basically, is that potentially illegal hate, terrorism, suicide, or FIO content be removed or be excluded, from user recommender feeds prior to amplification, and then once it's ascertained as legal, it can be recommended and amplified as naturally occurs. I think that's really everything from me on this. Happy to answer questions later. I will be passing to my colleague Barani for crisis response. Thank you.
Fab, thanks, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Bereni. I am the policy lead for hate, abuse, and harassment here at Ofcom. I also led on the crisis response measure, so I'll be going through the measure with you today. Now, this measure is in response to the Southport riots that happened last year. Now, we acknowledge that situations like the riots, which we refer to as crises in the consultation, are very different from normal times for two reasons. Number one, there is an increase in illegal content and content harmful to children. And two, the risk of online harm causing offline harm is so much greater. So bearing this in mind, we propose that our measure is intended to tackle a crisis throughout its life cycle, from the very beginning to the very end. The measure itself is in different parts. The first is for services themselves to have a crisis response protocol or plan in place. And as part of this plan, providers will have to identify and monitor indicators, which points to a possible formation of a crisis. Now, example of indicators could be, say, information from law enforcement or government, or even spikes in the volume of reported illegal content or content harmful to children on the service. And as part of this measure, we also propose that there be a dedicated crisis response team that is overseeing all the mitigations that are being put in place. Now, this is to better facilitate collaboration and coordination so that the operations of the provider doesn't buckle under pressure from the crisis. And lastly, once the crisis is over, we propose that providers conduct a post-crisis analysis to continually improve and evolve their strategies and crisis response protocol. Now, who do these recommendations apply to, or who are we proposing that these recommendations apply to? We propose that they apply to user-to-user services, U2U services for short, that are either large and at medium risk or higher of the specified harms, or UTU services of any size that are at high risk of the specified harms. The list of specified harms, you can see some here, which are illegal terrorism, hate, foreign interference offense, and some form of primary priority content for children, which is abuse and hate and violent content. And that pretty much sums up the crisis response measure. So thank you so much. I believe I'm handing it over to Priya.
Hi everyone, I'm Priya Patel. I'm a policy manager in the CSA policy team at Ofcom. Last year, we published a suite of measures in the illegal content codes to tackle grooming. These are a set of default settings aimed to restrict visibility and communication with children. So this includes ensuring children don't appear in network expansion prompts, connection lists, and only receive messages from connected accounts. It also includes to provide child users with supportive messaging at key points of the user journey. So for example, if they're turning off their default settings or taking action against another user. We know that self-declaration of age is not an effective means to determine age, which means that children could be missing out on the protections of the measure, and we always intended to propose the use of highly effective age assurance to apply these measures to tackle online grooming. Therefore, in this consultation, we're proposing that in-scope service providers either implement highly effective age assurance to apply the safety default settings and supportive messaging measure, or apply them to all users of the service. Our proposal aims to increase the effectiveness of our established measure, and providing two options to apply these measures will allow services to choose what works best for their service, and ensure as many children as possible are provided with the protection of the measure, reducing the risk of grooming. As outlined in our legal harm statement, the measure applies to providers at high risk of grooming and large providers at medium risk of grooming. And I think I'm handing over to Jacob.
Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Kennedy. I'm a policy advisor in the CSA policy team here at Ofcom. So I'm going to be expanding on the previous recommendations for live streaming by focusing on what we're proposing to protect specifically children from the risks that are associated with this functionality. So as per the previous slide, live streaming in this context refers to situations where one user, in this case a child, broadcasts in live time to multiple viewers. We differentiate these to other video content, such as like group chats, where multiple users may be able to stream content, or a video call where two users are communicating in like a closed environment. From our research, we know that children are using live streaming in large numbers. Ofcom research showed that a really significant 21% of 13 to 17-year-olds broadcast their own live streams, often for like entertainment or gaming purposes. So while we recognise the benefits that this functionality has for children, we're also aware of several unique risks it presents, with evidence showing that children, with evidence showing that children identified through live streams, and then they're contacted and coerced into harmful acts such as suicide, self-harm, or sexual activity. As has already been discussed, it's our view that several characteristics of live streaming increase these risks. The real-time, ephemeral nature of live streaming can increase the confidence of offenders and reduce the inhibitions of children who can sometimes deem the live stream to be temporary. The ability of offenders to contact and incite certain behaviours in the moment via commenting, likes, or gifting functions increases risk further, and children are forced to act in the moment without the opportunity to sit back, think, or reflect on their actions that they're taking. Live streaming further presents challenges for content moderation for law enforcement, which obviously increase the risk of harm further. As such, we are considering recommending a set of measures which intend to build on our existing illegal harms code of practice that protect children while live streaming by targeting the specific functionalities that we've assessed to be underpinning these risks. This means that all user-to-user services that enable children in the UK to live stream, users should be able to watch but not be able to interact or respond to a live stream that's coming from a child's account. So this includes commenting or reacting, sending in-stream gifts to the child that's broadcasting, or using the service to capture the child's live stream, and where technically feasible, also doing the same when they would use third-party tools to like capture or record the broadcast. Highly effective age assurance, as described previously by Priya, should be used to apply these measures to all users that have not been determined to be adult accounts, and that the recommended settings should be forced on for all accounts assessed as belonging to a child. That's everything from me. I think I'm passing on to Jess.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to go through the proposals around user banning. I was policy lead for this. So we're proposing that providers ban users and prevent their return to the service where they've carried out child sexual exploitation and abuse. This is proposed to apply to all user-to-user services. The measure is directly targeted at users who generate, share, or upload CSEA content and those who receive CSAM. And the measure is motivated by the severity of these harms and also the particular risk of reoffending here. Our provisional view is to recommend that users are banned permanently as a default, but allow for edge cases or exceptional circumstances. We're not looking to set out exactly what these edge cases might be, as there's a risk that this could provide information to perpetrators to help them circumvent a permanent ban. However, we are saying that service providers should consider certain factors when setting the duration of a ban where it's not permanent, namely that the ban reflects the severity of the harm and serves as a deterrent against the banned user and others from carrying out further harm. We also consider it appropriate for providers to be able to overturn a ban on appeal, even where the relevant content was CSAM or was illegal, given the potential impact, particularly on potentially on child users, which I'll come to in a moment. And we've made the relevant amendments to the codes to allow for this. We are also giving providers discretion over the technical implementation of this measure, particularly around how users are prevented from returning. And this reflects the range of services in scope of this measure. And finally, a particularly difficult element of this measure is how to treat children. We know that there are multiple circumstances where children share or receive CSAM or SGII, self-generated intimate imagery online, and it may not always be appropriate to ban in these cases. So we've therefore consulted openly on two options. The first being whether children are banned who commit the CSA harm, except in two exceptional circumstances, which we've identified as being child victims and survivors who've been coerced or manipulated into sending these images, or older children who've sent these images to another child as part of a consensual, age-appropriate relationship. So we're welcoming views on this issue. And I don't think I'm passing over to anyone. I think that's the last measure, but correct me if I'm wrong.
We have one more, which I think should be Victoria.
Great.
Thanks, Jess.
Hi, it is. Thanks, both. Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm one of the policy managers on the CSA team, and I was leading on this hashing measure and the hash matching measure we had before, and also the CSA input in the proactive tech measure as well. So the basis of the proposal is that we're proposing to extend the hash matching measure to apply to additional services. So the existing codes already require some services to use hash matching to identify known child sexual abuse material. So that's large services at medium or high risk of image-based CSAM, services that are high risk of that harm with over 700,000 monthly active UK users, and any high risk file storage and file sharing service. So we're now proposing to extend that to all services that are high risk of image-based CSAM as before, but we're extending it to those whose principal purpose is hosting or disseminating regulated pornographic content as well. So the reason we're proposing this now is that pornography services are known to be a high-risk space for CSAM. So, for example, in a survey of CSA perpetrators on the dark web, Protect Children Finland, the civil society organisation, found that 31.7% of those surveyed had encountered CSAM on a pornography service. And we're aware of additional evidence that known CSAM is present on small regulated pornography services with lower user numbers that aren't in scope of the current recommendation that sits at 700,000 monthly users. This is a particular concern for post-pubescent child sexual abuse material. So that tends to be material that depicts 16 to 17-year-olds. It's a particular problem for this harm because human moderators can struggle with age determination on that content. And so content may be incorrectly left on the service. And so applying hash matching, which seeks to detect known images of CSAM depicting those victims and survivors that have already been verified by law enforcement to be children. It makes it more likely that those images will be removed, more so than using human moderation alone. And we also know that additional low or no cost options to implement hashing have come about since we made the first recommendation, the first set of codes. And we have received reassurance from database providers through the previous consultation that they do have the capacity to support the current recommendation. And so we consider it an appropriate move to widen the scope now. And in general, we think that by expanding this measure to those services, it will materially reduce the volume of child sexual abuse material present online, particularly on these services. And that was the last measure, so I'm going to pass back to Lawrence for Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. Firstly, say thank you to all our presenters for the really clear and concise explanations of the proposals. And also apologies for the slight timing over the slides during the presentation where I had to suddenly nip back and having jumped to the end inadvertently. We have time available now for questions. As I've asked, if people attending can submit their questions via the Q&A function on Teams, you may find you need to click the kind of 3 dots listed on the more to be able to access the Q&A function. That was certainly the case for myself. But yeah, please feel free to submit them now. We've had a couple that have come in already, so I'll get to those. But please feel free to put more in while you are thinking. The first question is in relation to the user sanctions measure. It comes from Chris Ewing. So Chris has asked, in relation to proposed measure and implementing sanctions policy, is the intent that such a policy should be made publicly available to users, or should it be rather only an internal policy for use by the service provider and specifically their kind of moderation function? Rob, if that's okay, I'm going to come to you for a response to that one.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, it's a great question. I mean, the kind of key to this answer is that no, basically, it is not required that the full kind of user sanctions policy is posted publicly. We recognize there is a risk that giving too much information in this area can enable bad actors who may sort of seek to work their way around the policy. However, what we do recommend is that providers should include information about the sanctions policy in their terms of service to provide some level of transparency to users, and that this should include at least the types of sanctions that the provider might impose under this policy. So the kind of full policy can be kept as an internal document as long as that information is provided through the terms of service.
Thank you, Rob. That's really clear. The other question we've had in comes from Krista Stanton. So this is in relation to the terrorism hash matching measure. And the question kind of concerns costs and proportionality to some extent. So Chris asks, what options are available for smaller to medium scale services to adhere to these requirements, obviously whether in scope. He refers to kind of the cost of GiveCT membership and is looking for information about what's required and sort of potential alternative options. So I think either Murtaza or Al, would you be able to come in on this, please?
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. I'll come on this. Yeah, thanks for your question there. It's a good question. So in relation to use of a third-party database, use of a third-party database in itself isn't necessarily kind of aligned with total compliance. We've just laid it out as an option for those in-scope services to consider if they want to use a third-party database to supplement their own internal database and content moderation function. As you'll see in the consultation documentation, we've laid out our understanding around costs, around one-off builds, maintenance, operational costs, etc. We'd certainly welcome feedback on that, and we'll go from there. But hopefully that does answer your question. And I think the final thing I would probably say is that in relation to this particular measure, we think there may be some synergy around costs because most services that are in scope of the terrorism measure will probably be in scope of the CSAM and the intimate image abuse measure as well. So there may be some cost saving within that. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Al. Yeah, so speaks to us at the beginning. This is absolutely a consultation stage, and obviously one of the things we're really interested in is gathering additional evidence to inform and sort of improve our impact assessments of these measures. So yeah, we absolutely welcome anything along those lines. I have not seen any other questions come in. I'm going to give people a couple of minutes to think about them. In the meantime, I will just talk a little bit about what's coming up in terms of the the remainder of the consultation process and how you can engage with that. So the consultation runs until the 20th of October. So we've got quite a long period. I think, recognizing that we were going ahead over the summer, and it may be challenging people to respond or engage during that period. So that's the deadline for any formal responses that you'd like us to consider. You can obviously now find the detailed proposals and all the various supporting documents annexes for the consultation on our website. We also have an email address, which is on screen now. It's asmconsultation@ofcom.org.uk. That is both the place to send your responses, and also you can contact myself and the rest of the team there for any clarification questions you need. If you're looking for a meeting or anything else in relation to the consultation process itself. We will also be in September hosting some thematic roundtables. These are designed to be deep dives into particular measures. We're going to be sort of grouping the measures together in clusters. These events will be by invitation only, but we're looking to get a range of both civil society, industry, and other stakeholders at Lowe's to really kind of have some more deliberative discussions about some of the more challenging and contentious areas of the measures. We think that'll be a really valuable way of generating ideas. So please look out for those as well. And obviously, we stand willing to support one-to-one meetings and other conversations about the consultation. Again, whether that's seeking clarification, whether that's talking about what type of evidence you can helpfully provide, or anything else regarding the process and our proposals as well. So please, feel free to engage as you wish, and we're sort of here to support, whether that's by meeting the team directly, whether that's us facilitating conversations with policy leads in relation to specific topics, or whether that's through your existing contacts in our supervision teams or otherwise. So I hope that is clear, and I'll say we absolutely stand ready to support that engagement any way possible. I'm just going to check for other questions that have come in. I think we've had a follow up from Chris in relation to his question around terrorism match. I think that's more kind of clarification of the original question, Chris. So I think we don't have to add anything to our response now on that, but absolutely it's really helpful to have that understanding of where that question came from. In which case, it looks like there are no further questions at this stage. Please feel free to, if anything occurs afterwards, to come back to us via email or via your existing contacts at Ofcom, and we will endeavour to answer those. Alistair, did you want to come in on Chris's follow-up? You might sort of set what it is.
Yeah, sorry, there was a recent update from the Tech Coalition in relation to photo DNA, where they've expanded the use for terrorism content. If we can get Chris's details, I can send further information on this for him for his consideration. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. If you want to follow us up via email with contact details, or we can track those down from your registration for this, and I'll put you in touch with Alistair to follow up on that point. Thank you. If there are no further questions at this stage, all that remains is to say thank you both to yourselves for attending and taking the time to come listen to our explanation of the proposals. Also, obviously, to really fantastic policy teams for putting their time aside to come speak to us today and for the really clear elucidation of what's in the consultation. And also thank you to the additional safety measures team for arranging the event and the logistics from now. Thank you very much. I really hope that was useful and you got something out today. This is the start of the process, and I look forward to engaging with you over the coming weeks and months. And please have a pleasant evening. Thanks, everyone.